This week in CIST 2612, we'll look at Chapter 13, Cloud Forensics. The objectives for this chapter is to look at the main concepts of cloud computing. We'll summarize the legal challenges in conducting cloud forensics. We'll also look at the overview of technical challenges with cloud forensics. We'll describe how to acquire the cloud data, how to conduct a cloud investigation. And also, we will look at what remote access tools can be used for cloud investigations. All right, so the cloud has introduced new ways of managing data, but cloud investigations have also has some unique challenges. So there are new standards that are being developed to improve the security practices and incident responses in cloud environments. So first we'll start with looking at the history of the cloud. The idea for the cloud computer came from several people, including Professor John McCarthy of MIT, and Dr. J.C.R. Lichtlander. He was the director of the U.S. Department of Defense of ARPA. So in 1999, Salesforce.com developed a customer relationship management web service that applied digital marketing research to business subscribers so that they could do a market analysis, and that service is what eventually led to the cloud. Now there are other service providers started their own cloud service as well, such as Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft OneDrive. Those are other ones that come around after Web 2.0. All right, the NIST defines cloud computing as a computing storage system that provides on-demand network access for multiple users and can allocate storage to users and keep up with their changes in their needs. There are three service levels for the cloud. We have software as a service, what's where the applications are delivered via the internet. You have platform as a service, that is where the operating system has been installed on a cloud server. Then we have the infrastructure as a service. It's where customers can rent hardware and install the operating systems and applications as they need. So we'll look at some where these are, where the evidence is located for these different service levels. So for the software as a service, it's most likely going to be stored on desktops, laptops, tablets, and smartphones. The platform of the service, these are most likely to be found on desktops or servers. It can be found stored on a company network or remote service providers infrastructure as well. Now with the platform of service, once again, it's a cloud service that provides a platform in the cloud that only has the operating system, where the customer can use the platform to load their own applications and data. And the cloud service provider, in this case, they're responsible only for the operating system and the hardware that it runs on. So the customer's going to be responsible for everything else that they have loaded onto this. And we look at infrastructure as a service. This is usually found on desktops or servers. The infrastructure equipment that can be owned by the company or the remote service provider. As we said before, it's the customers rent the hardware, install the whatever operating system applications they need for this. So they supply their own operating system, applications, databases, operations staff, and once again, the cloud providers, they're all responsible for selling and releasing the hardware. All right, so deployment methods for a cloud have four different deployment methods. You have public cloud. It's a cloud service available to the general public. It's accessible to everyone. A private cloud, that's a cloud service dedicated to a single organization. So it's only going to be accessed by the people who have the necessary credentials. A community cloud, that's a shared cloud service, provides access to common or shared data. As you see, it's a way to bring people together for a specific purpose. A hybrid cloud, that's a cloud deployment model. That's going to combine the public, private, and community cloud services under one cloud. Segregation of data is used to protect private cloud storage and application. So with this, a company can keep some private information private, and they can also designate other files as public or community information. Now, a cloud service provider, this uses a variety of approaches and systems to build their cloud systems. Cloud service provider, it's vendors that provide on-demand network access to shared pools of resources, which is typically remote data storage or web applications. So we see some example here of some cloud service providers and cloud applications, such as Salesforce, Amazon EC2, Google's cloud storage, and so forth. Now, cloud forensics, this can be defined as simply applying digital forensics to cloud computing, and is considered a subset of network forensics. It can also have 3 dimensions. So the article that you read in the book will reference this. Organizational, it addresses the structure of the cloud. Legal, it covers service agreements and other jurisdictional matters. And also technical, that deals with the procedures and specialized applications designed to perform the forensic recovery and analysis in the cloud. Now, there are some capabilities, forensic tools that you should have to use that are needed to handle or acquiring data from the cloud. For example, the forensic data collection. Those tools must be able to identify, label, record, and acquire data from the cloud. Elastic, static, and live forensics. These must be able to expand and contract their storage capabilities. Evidence segregation is different businesses and users share the same applications and storage space. And also investigations in a virtualized environment. These tools should have the capability to examine the virtual systems. Because cloud computing is rapidly changing, though, laws haven't kept up with the implications of storing files and data locations that aren't physically within reach. So you do have some factors to consider involving a cloud service provider's relationship with the cloud user. One of these we'll look at is the CSP's contract obligations with the cloud users, and also how warrants and subpoenas are applied to CSPs and their users. All right, a cloud service agreement. That is a contract between a cloud service provider and a cloud customer. Now, if you have any changes, additions or changes to a SLA, a service level agreement, that can be made through an admin. So the service legal agreements in here will be included with the cloud service. So with this, they should also specify the support options, penalties for penalties for services not provided, system preferences, performance, fees, provided software or hardware, and others. Now, a CSA should define and detail the scope of its services and responsibilities of the customer. It should include the service hours, restrictions applied to the customer by the CSP, availability of the cloud to the customer, the level of support for the customer, response time for data transfer, throughput limitations, contingency plans for incident responses, the business continuity and disaster recovery plan, fees for the subscription to the cloud, and fees for additional services as they occur, security measures, and also the terminology of the cloud systems and applications. Also in this, the CSP components, they must state who is authorized to access the data and what limitations are in conducting acquisitions for an investigation. All right, so digital forensic examiners, they should be most concerned with restrictions applied to the customers and security measures. You also want to note that CSPs should address any multi-jurisdictional concerns and define how conflicts between laws of different countries will be resolved. So they'll say, in case of a dispute, this jurisdiction is in charge of the laws. So when we look at also in this, forensic investigators, you should also be aware and review the following when you're preparing a cloud investigation plan. The policies, those are detailed rules for a CSP's internal operation. They typically include personnel responsibilities, management structure, delegation authority, contracting authority, expectations of protecting data, and authorization to distribute information. So the policies will give their detailed rules for a file service provider's internal operation. The standards, that gives guidance to staff for unique operations, hardware and software, and also describes their obligations in daily operations and security of the CSP's environment. Guidelines will describe the best practices for cloud processes and also give staff an example of what they should strive to achieve in their work. Process and procedures, those are detailed documents that define the workflow and step-by-step instructions for a CSP staff. These will often include the hardware configuration diagrams, network maps, the application processing flow charts. Now, as a forensic examiner, you can use those to understand how the data is stored, manipulated, secured, backed up, restored, and how it's also accessed by CSP staff and customers. One of the additional documents you may be interested in is the business continuity disaster recovery plans. These plans can be helpful in recovering and analyzing data you need for your investigation. There's currently no law that ensures uniform access or required handling procedures for the cloud. So investigators should be concerned about cases involving data commingled with other customer data that's unrelated to the investigation. So we have cross-jurisdiction legal issues. Many of these still have not been resolved. So often figuring out what laws control data stored in the cloud is a big challenge. A CSA, they can prescribe what laws are enforceable. They don't usually control privacy issues or criminal or civil procedures. Now, the definition of privacy rights, this is going to be different. In different jurisdictions it's a major factor in problems with the rights to access data. So we see the EU directive, it's more restricted than the rules in other countries, including the United States. The digital forensic examiners, they can be held liable for conducting an investigation involving cloud data. The examiners should consult with legal experts when conducting cloud examinations to make sure they are aware of possible restrictions in collecting the evidence. Now, when evidence needs to be seized, warrants are used in criminal cases and issued by law enforcement. Now, when only information is needed, typically subpoenas are used in civil and criminal cases. So the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, that describes the 5 mechanisms the government can use to get electric information from a provider. The search warrant subpoenas with prior notice to the subscriber or customer. Court orders with prior notice to the subscriber or customer. Now, search warrants, these can only be used in criminal cases and must be requested by a law enforcement officer who has evidence of probable cause that a crime has been committed. The law requires search warrants to contain specific descriptions of what's to be seized. And now when we're talking about for the cloud environments, the property to be seized is usually data rather than the physical hardware, unless the cloud service provider is the suspect. Now there are some complications that can arise when requesting a search warrant. You do have the issues of that if a search is announced, you have the risk of failing to preserve the evidence increasing. So other ones is that you must have the location of items to be seized, which is difficult when your cloud servers may be located across different states, different nations. You also have to have it set out to where it's going to be carried out. It must establish how the search warrants will be carried out, specify the date and time to minimize disruptions to people and business operations. So when you get a subpoena or court order, you've got government agency subpoenas. That's customer communication records can't be knowingly divulged to any persons or entity. Okay, so these government agent subpoenas are used to get information when it's believed there's a danger of death or serious physical injury. With non-government or civil litigation subpoenas, it's used to provide information from private parties for litigation. Now, court orders are written by a judge, and what they do is they compel someone to do something or not do something. The technical challenges in cloud forensics, they include the architecture of the system, the data collection, the analysis of cloud forensic data, anti-forensics, the incident first responders, role management, legal issues, standards and training, versions. So let's look at also with the database administration and security, software security, and international relations. So we'll start with looking at the architecture. So we got no two CSPs are configured in the exact same way. And depending on the type of cloud architecture, customers' data might be commingled with and that can make it more difficult to sort through the data to determine what is relevant to the case. Now, there are also differences in recording procedures or logs, log keeping, and that can also make it difficult to determine a data's origin, and it can also complicate an investigation's chain of evidence. So architecture and the log keeping can become hindrance to your investigation. Cloud forensic data. Analyzing digital evidence collected from the cloud requires verifying the data with the other data and log records. Digital examiners may need to reconstruct the data to determine what occurred during an incident. Now, examining logs can be useful in comparing the modified last access and create dates and times for a file. The metadata from the affected files should be examined in order to validate the file access when you're analyzing the cloud forensics data. Anti-forensics can be defined as the act of destroying ESIs that potential evidence. So this may be something where the hackers use specialized malware for defeating evidence collections. Some additional methods for anti-forensics is inserting the malware programs in other files, using encryption to obfuscate malware programs activated through other malware programs, or using data hiding utilities that append malware to existing files. So the different tactics, anti-forensic tactics that hackers may use also, some other things I'm going to do is change the timestamps, make it difficult to develop a timeline of the hacker's activity, other things that the hacker may try to defeat your forensics. Typically, CSPs have personnel that will be trained to respond to network incidents. If the CSP doesn't have an internal first responder team, then a forensic examiner should organize CSP staff to respond to incidents. Now, there are some factors that should be addressed when assembling a first responder team. One is, will the CSP's operation staff be cooperative and follow directions? Will management issue orders stating that you're the leader of an investigation? Do you need to brief the staff about operation security? Do you need to train the staff in evidence collection procedures, including the chain of custody? All right, role management, this covers data owners, identity protection, users, access controls, etc. This information can be used to identify additional victims or suspects. All right, as the cloud has become more widely used, there is an effort to standardize cloud architectures for operational procedures, interoperability, testing, and validation. The Cloud Security Alliance, the CSA, they've developed resource documentation for CSPs and their staff. Cloud investigators should also have an understanding of cloud architecture, in addition to the basic design or basic digital network forensic skills. There are some sources for cloud forensics training, such as the InfoSec Institute, SANS Cloud Forensics, and others. The methods used to collect evidence in the cloud investigations depend on the nature of the case. There are some scenarios and methods used to collect evidence in the cloud equipment. Those are instances involving network penetration through a CPS's firewall, investigating an unauthorized database access. An e-discovery and investigation requires collecting specific files and recovery, deleted artifacts, remote acquisitions, and cloud systems running in virtual environments. So each one of those are going to have their unique challenges used to collect evidence. One thing too is with cloud systems running in virtual environments, snapshots can give you valuable information before, during, and after an incident. So you should be able to recreate separate cloud servers from each snapshot. You acquire the image of each server and then calculate a hash for all the files. Okay, when we talk about acquisitions in the cloud, the methods used to collect evidence in cloud investigations, once again, is going to depend on the nature of the case. I'm sorry, we're in encryptions in cloud. So many CSPs and third parties offer encryption services for cloud users as a security measure. So there's a good chance of encountering encrypted files in the cloud investigation. You'll need assistance from the data owner or the CSP to decrypt the data with the right encryption key. So in this case, if the data owner is uncooperative, you may need to get an attorney handling the case or the data owner's management. Now, encrypted data in cloud is in two stages. You got data at rest and data in motion. Data at rest is data that's been written to a disk. Data in motion is data that's being transmitted over a network. Some systems also have encryption for data that's in use. That's the data that is currently being used in the RAM. If encrypted data is encountered, you want to find out from the CSP what type of encryption was used and who knows how to recover it. Some vendors offer encryption services for cloud data, such as the Secure Cloud from Trend Micro, among others. Something may be like a blockchain technology that's used by companies such as Bitcoin, and it's used to trace information while keeping it secure. When investigating cloud instance, it should involve the same systematic approach that we talked about in previous chapters of this textbook. The type of incident determines how to proceed with planning the investigation. And if the investigator involved searching for and recovering data from cloud or storage or cloud customers, you want to follow the methods that were described in chapters 5 and 6. When we're investigating CSPs, if the CSP has no team or limited staff, you want to make sure that you ask to understand how the CSP is set up. Does the investigator have the authority to use cloud staff and resources to conduct an investigation? Is detailed knowledge of the cloud's topology, policies, data storage methods, and devices available? Are there any restrictions on collecting digital evidence from remote cloud storage? Now, if you have e-discovery demands on multi-tenant cloud systems, is the data to collect commingled with other cloud customers' unrelated data? And is there a way to separate that data to prevent violating privacy rights or confidentiality agreements? Also consider, is the data of interest to the investigation local or remote? If it is a remote location, can the CSP provide a forensically sound connection to it? When investigating cloud customers, you want to make sure that the location should be checked when searching for evidence of a cloud customer's computer or mobile device. You might find cloud-related evidence in the web browser's cache files. So you make sure that you check that area. You want to see the CSP's application folder. And this is usually found under the user account folder. You also want to check the Windows prefetch folder on the user's computer. Now, the prefetch file that contains the DLL path names and metadata is used for an application. And the operating system reads the associated prefetch file and loads its information in the computer's memory to speed up an application start time. The metadata in a prefetch file contains an application's MAC times in UTC format and a counter of how many times the application has run since the prefetch file was created. Now, if you see that a prefetch file is deleted, Windows recreates one that resets the MAC times and the counter. So looking at figure 13-1, this shows offset positions for a counter and the date and times. We also see here the number of times that the application has ran. All right, so we have 3 widely used cloud services: Dropbox, Google Drive, and OneDrive. Now, for these, they have different service agreements. For example, 2 gigs for Dropbox, 15 gigs for Google and OneDrive. Those are the free ones. They also have paid services. These applications will have registry entries. And with this, the user must maintain control over access to their cloud accounts. Dropbox also offers third-party applications such as email, Cisco WebEx. Since 2012, they have used a base64 format to store content. The Gmail users have access to Google Drive for cloud data stores and applications. We see the pathway for where the Google Drive will be stored. Each user will have a configuration file. It's going to be called a user profile. We see the location for the user file. Now, if you have Google Drive installed, it's going to create a folder in that path. See usernames / username or user / username / Google Drive. There are some important Google Drive files, such as the sync config.db. That's an SQL database file with a Google Drive upgrade number. It also has the highest application version number and a local synchronization route path. Snapshot.db contains information about each file accessed, the URL path name, the modified and created dates and times in a Unix timestamp format, and the file's MD5 value and size. The sync_log.log, that's going to detail the list of the user's cloud transactions. OneDrive was created by Microsoft. It was originally going to be called SkyDrive. This is something that was available in Windows 8 and later. Like Google and Dropbox, it is similar to those. It does have the free version, but it also has offer for subscription services. It's going to store the user's profile and the user's account path. Depending on the window version, the log file and synchronized files are going to be kept in various places under the user's account. We see some examples here of like the sync engine, the date format that manages synchronization between OneDrive and the user's computer. With prefetch artifacts, you can collect these with a disk editor or forensics tools. If you start an activity on page 546 in your textbook, You can find the application's MAC dates and times, and also the number of times that Dropbox has ran. There are some tools for cloud forensics. For example, you have tools that are integrated with digital network e-discovery tools that are used to combine and collect and analyze cloud data. For example, the F-Response, guided software in case e-discovery, access data. All right, so some of these, the forensic OpenStack tools or Frost, that integrates with OpenStack and adds forensic response capabilities from a CSP. OpenStack is an open source computing platform. It's intended for public and private cloud servers, and it's the first effort to provide forensic response process for a cloud service. Now, a feature of Frost is it bypasses VM's hypervisor. It collects data that's placed in a cloud's management plane, which is a tool with an application programming interface that allows reconfiguring a cloud on the fly. Special malware that can take control of a virtual session or deny or alter access. F-Response for the cloud, it's a remote access tool we applied to cloud forensics. It uses USB forwarding techniques to allow non-remote capable forensics tools to access remote servers and their data storage. Magnet, Axiom Cloud. This has created a cloud module to go with its processes and examine modules. It's become the most investigators are now require collecting information from the cloud as well as computers, files, and mobile devices. So it can retrieve information from Facebook Messenger, Skype, Instagram, Twitter. You're still going to need the username and passwords for this to work, though. So this is going to bring us to the end of Chapter 13 and Cloud Forensics.